All right, guys, welcome back to another Rambling On podcast. This is a good time to do it because I'm literally stuck here creating all these uh, antimatter charges for my last task for this one particular career agent. So, a little bit of time to go on. So, I thought what I'd talk about is, we'll keep an eye on this, and when it's done, I'll deliver it, and we'll move on to the next one. First of all, there's all this stuff you have to make this. So I even I took a snapshot of it with my camera. I was like, okay, I'm going to go out. I outfitted my mining ship with like a scanner that can detect what kind of minerals there are on an asteroid, and with a mining, laser, and with a gun just in case, space pirates. And then at some point I was like, wait, maybe they sell these things. And yeah, they do. They sell it. Here's one of the things: pyrite, um, ti- tritanium. I had already from a previous mission. I'd overmined it, so it's like I just bought it and I came over here. I guess they're just trying to show you, hey, you can make stuff that's kind of like part of maybe the tutorial level of this game, sort of early level stuff. So anyway, thought we could talk today about boomers, baby boomers. And I just wanted to say, like, my both of my parents are baby boomers. I'm a Gen Xer, and you know, overall, I'd say usually generations, the idea of a generation is pretty meaningless. It's like, where's the cutoff point? All that BS. But I will say one thing it's useful for is cultural touchstones, right? So, like, um, I can get together with another Gen Xer and we can talk about how Courtney Love killed Kurt Cobain or something, or we can make an obscure reference about Space Ghost, which is a cartoon from our childhood that nobody under the age of 45 knows who that is, you know. So there's cool things about, just having those cultural touchstones. But I want to make a case to you that baby boomers are different. And I know baby boomers have gotten sort of this, okay, boomer, there's like this big backlash against them. And I want to just explain to you why it's 100% justified. It's not just people being ageist, right? Like, people have always been, to some extent or another, shitty to old people, right? That's kind of a thing, shut up, old man, or whatever. But so ageism does exist, super duper totally does exist. A lot of times in the workplace, if you're over 50, it's hard to get a new job somewhere. So like, it's a thing. But let me just talk to you about the boomers while we wait for this lame ass extended task I have to complete here. So I want to paint a picture for you after World War II. Okay, so World War II ends, right? So at the end of the war, America had been loaning money to all of our allies. So, France, Great Britain, and even Russia towards the end, or the Soviet Union towards the end, we'd been loaning them money the whole time. In fact, before we even joined the war, there was something called the Lend-Lease Act. And what it was a way for America to kind of enter the war without really entering the war, because a lot of Americans did not want to enter the war. They were either isolationist or they were straight out pro Germany, like pro Nazi. There were a lot of pro Nazis in America. Charles Lindbergh, the famous aviator, was pro Nazi, pro Hitler. So not everybody wanted to join. So we had this Lend Lease program, which was a way, here we go, deliver, bada bing, bada boom, succeeded. I succeeded, guys. Okay, that was my second one. I got to make 10 of these. So here's number 3. Anyway, so the point of that all is that even by the time we joined the war, all of our allies owed us a lot of money. We'd been loaning them or leasing them military equipment for a long time, and that was expected to be paid back at some point. Then, once the war ended, we had what were called war reparations that were levied against Italy, Japan, and Germany. And the reparations were established in the treaty that ended the war. And it was basically like, you fucked a bunch of shit up, you owe us money, like all of us, not just America, but everybody. But the point being is that all of our competitors in the world owed us money, like a lot of money, like a shit ton of money. You talk about spending. If you look at spending charts for a nation during a war, it spikes. It goes way up, and every nation's spending went way up. But a lot of that expense came to us because we were selling them bombers, and we were. So just keep that in mind. Everyone owed us money. We were the number one creditor nation in the world by far. In fact, to the extent that had never been seen in the world before. Never had one country had everyone owe them money, a lot of money. Okay, so that's one big thing. The second big thing is that when you talk about industry, our factories were humming. We had factories churning out like it was crazy, like 100 B-52 bombers a week or some. I made that up, but it's like, it was insane, man. Like all of our factories were completely modernized and just humming, just really workers in there, skilled, machinists, people who knew how to work these machines, people who knew how to modify the machines, and, people who were, skilled, knew what they were doing. Meanwhile, in all of our competitors, you talk about Japan, Germany, France, Britain, all of their factories were crumbling bits of gravel and blood and bone. Like their industry had been bombed level because during a war, that's what you bomb. All those bombing soirees that you saw in black and white films of, the bombs just coming down like, like popcorn, just falling, just like hundreds of them. And then just the landscape, lighting up. Those were industrial districts. Sometimes they were military compounds, but usually, at least a lot of the time, those were industrial compounds. And so at the end of the war, at the end of World War II, all of our competitors, if you think about, the global market, all of our competitors had been bombed back to the Stone Age. They had no industry, nothing. So that's point number two. Point number one, everybody owed us money, a lot of money. That's unique in human history. Number two, everyone was destroyed but us. And, Canada and Mexico, in all fairness, right? But everybody in Europe, everybody in Asia had been bombed to shit. So we had the only industry, the only production capacity in the world for at least 10 or 20 years. It takes a while to build that capacity back up. Number three, we saw ourselves as the saviors of World War II, right? The war was going really, really badly. France had been gobbled up. All of Poland had been gobbled up. Czechoslovakia, and Hitler was marching into Russia. I mean, just taking, like it was ridiculous, 20 miles a day or something, just taking territory and just really eating up everything. It looked pretty dire. And so when America entered the war, it was at a pivotal point. So we came out of that war feeling like we just won that war for him. I mean, you've heard boomers say, if it weren't for us, you'd be speaking German right now or some shit like that, maybe to a French person or whatever. And it's funny because, let's go ahead and deliver this shipment. It's funny because I don't think it took me till I was like 30 to hear about the Battle of Stalingrad. Y'all ever heard of the Battle of Stalingrad? The Battle of Stalingrad was a bloody and terrible, terrible war that happened in Russia. And it was the turn of the tide of the war. That's where they stopped him. That's where they stopped Hitler. Hitler was about to take Moscow. If he had taken Russia, then he would have taken all of those troops from the Eastern Front, moved them back west, and won the war. Really just overrun Britain, overrun the American forces, and won the war. So it was really this amazing, amazing sacrifice made by the Russians in Stalingrad. And again, I'm sorry that I don't have the actual stats in front of me, but I think 8 million Russians lost their lives in that battle. If that's wrong, I'm so, so sorry. But I just remember hearing about that battle and just being floored by how, like I think in the entire war, the United States lost like 350,000 souls, and God bless them and their sacrifice. But think about 8 million, like that's the population of Manhattan, like that's how many people died in Stalingrad. And honestly, I got to say, you know what? We're sitting here waiting for this damn thing to casualties in Battle of Stalingrad. Just curious. I don't want to be throwing out terrible Soviet forces. Okay, 100. I'm glad I looked that up. 1,100,000 casualties. So, uh, oops. I'm so glad I looked that up. I do hate casual fake news. I really do. It bugs me. That's why I kind of had to bop over and check this out. Um, so, 1.2 million, whatever that was. So basically, in that one battle, 3 times the casualties that the United States suffered in the entire war. And that's where they stopped Hitler. And after that, the war changed. They pushed back against him. In fact, they pushed Hitler back all the way to Berlin and taking Poland back, taking all of Eastern Europe back, driving him back. Now, America, we did our part. We helped, but it was really strange hearing that the turn of the tide of the war was actually a Russian effort, and a Russian effort that came at great cost. So that's all interesting and everything, but let's just back up to boomers, okay? I'm building a structure here, if you will. So just keep those 3 things in mind. Number 1, America is the number 1 creditor in the nation, in the world. Everyone owes us money, and everybody's thankful that we loan the money, so forth. Number 2, we're the number 1 industrial might. In fact, we're the only industrial might in the world. And number 3, we have this national belief that we just saved the fucking world. Okay, whether that's true or not. I mean, my opinion is we were part of an effort that saved the world. We stood alongside the British and the French resistance and the Canadians and a bunch of other people. But we were an important part of that. And of course, Russians, who, a lot of people point out, Russia started the war against us, and then, Hitler betrayed him. So there's a little bit of, it's hard to be super thankful to the Russians. But the fact is, by the end of the war, they were fighting Hitler too, and they ended up actually turning the tide of the war. But so here's what I want you to think about is, what if you grew up, your childhood, your formative years, you're a toddler, and then you're 8, you're going to school, you're learning about America, and you're learning that America is the shit. Like the kind of country that has never, ever existed before in the world. And here's the thing. It was true for like 10 or 15 years. Nobody there'd never been a country that everybody owed that much money to, right? That was unique as far as I can tell in human history. There had never been a country that was alone producing goods and having factories churning out production. Deliver this load here. And certainly the world was thankful, so thankful to America. And, we saw news footage of Americans marching in, liberating Paris, Arc de Triomphe or whatever, marching under that, and just newsreel after newsreel of, seeing that. But here's the picture I want to paint of boomers for you, because I want to understand them, and I think it will help you to understand them too, and to kind of understand why sometimes they're shitty. Is their childhood was lived in a temporary and unsustainably high level America. Okay, because eventually they paid us back, right? That's just, they paid us back little by little, and eventually they paid us back. And eventually they rebuilt their factories. So once again, we had competitors, and we ended up having competitors like Honda or Fiat or, whatever, Triumph, various, but for just a brief amount of time there, and this is the America they grew up in, there was this a spike in power. And you can see America's influence and power as an ascending line, like we've been, from early times, from colonial times. I feel like we've been on this sort of steady increase in terms of our power and influence and economic, GDP or whatever. But there was, right there after the war, a spike, a huge spike. And, a spike has two sides to it. It has an ascending side and it has a descending side. It goes back down again. Well, the boomers were formed, their formative years, from birth, and depending on, which kind of boomer you're talking about, but usually like from birth to around age 15 to 20, right? Again, the whole boomer thing is, it starts in 1945 when the soldiers started coming back and having large families, because they're back from the war. They've been delaying having families. A lot of them, went when they were 18, and they're coming back. They're 23, 24. And so really, really wanting to catch up and have a family. And so you just have this boom of babies. That's what it is. And so the deal is, you have this huge population group, just a really big population group that thinks that that's normal. It thinks that America should be lauded as almost a godlike nation, that everyone should be thankful forever, and everyone should always owe us money, like be laying money at our feet, and no one should ever compete with us. Like we're dominant, we're number one, we're the best. And literally, for their childhood and adolescence, and some of them even young adulthood, that was literally true. Like, it was literally true. We were the number one nation in the world. And if you think about what the greatest generation did when they came back, it's amazing. They built the interstate system, right? They connected our nation with this amazing new system of highways that really vitalized the economy. Economists say that was huge, that sheer connection really stimulates trade and economy in a big way. I think they say infrastructure, like you put $1 in, you get like $1.80 or $2 out. It's like it pays for itself and then some. Some estimates go up to like $2.30 per dollar, whatever. But anyway, they invested. They started the GI Bill so that their kids could go to college for cheap, and so the GIs could go to college for cheap, and so they invested in education heavily. They did all kinds of really progressive things, like Nixon, who the boomers hated. He was a greatest generation guy. He started the EPA. Like, if Nixon ran for president today, they would call him a socialist liberal. Like, we've shifted so far to the right, it's ridiculous. Nixon, who is considered, staunch Republican, conservative, he started the EPA. There's a lot of other interesting facts like that can be delved into, but it's not the point. It's really not the point. The point here is that now what you have is this generation, this huge generation that grew up thinking that, let me go ahead and deliver this payload here. Growing up thinking that their nation is the number one nation, the best nation that this planet has ever seen. Literally the best, number one, greatest ever nation ever. Okay, so keep that in mind. Now, as they grow up, prosperity flows. The greatest generation really managed things well. Like I said, the interstate system was only one way that they invested there were taxation rates right around 90% for the most wealthy people. So they were taxing the most wealthy people and investing that into education and training and infrastructure. And so there was this huge prosperity in the 50s and 60s. So I remember my mom describing to me, this was the first time ever that record companies marketed to kids. There used to be like kind of playtime albums or whatever, but like no, en masse, like by the millions, you could go gold marketing to teenagers. And that's exactly what happened with Elvis Presley. That's exactly what happened with the Beatles and then spin-offs like the Monkees. And it's for the first time ever a generation of kids, I say kids, I mean 15, 16, 17 year olds were being directly marketed to en masse. And here's where I want you to understand that happened to the boomers at every stage of their life. So when they reached their 20s, every commercial on TV was talking about their problems because they wanted to sell shit to them. You have this huge generation, a really, really big generation, big, the largest in, national history, but also the most affluent, a large generation with a lot of money. So everybody's marketing to them. But think of what that means. That means everywhere they turn, someone is trying to curry favor with them. Someone's trying to tell them that their needs are really important. Think about what a commercial is. You need a new car because you're blah, blah, blah. This isn't your father's Buick. This is the new and improved blah, blah, blah. Like everything around them was telling them how great they were and that they were the most important people around. So if you put all of these things together, you kind of understand that this is a unique generation, okay? We're not talking about, look, Gen X, we've got our little angsty shit. We get ignored. Nobody markets to us. Nobody gives a fuck. Millennials have been screwed big time because there's no more jobs left. The boomers either mechanized all their jobs or sent them all overseas, and none of the benefits of that got transferred to the workers. It all got absorbed to the top 1%. So the millennials are fucked. You can talk about these other generations, but the boomers, I think, are unique. So I'm going to wrap it up by saying this, because it looks like, I'm out of this Trillium crap. So I got to go buy some more. I'll do that in just a minute because I'm going to sum this up. So I remember my mom and my dad, and I remember hearing other boomers talking about it too. They were like, America was a city on the hill. And they talked about Camelot. And Kennedy would have been King Arthur in this vision of Camelot. And then they talk about how they usually talk about when Kennedy was assassinated, Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. They mix in when Jimi Hendrix died, when Janis Joplin died, when Jim Morrison died. It all kind of comes together into this sort of like that they lost their innocence. They talk about this idea that they lost their innocence and so forth. And then in 1980, the boomers coming into power, if you think about it, they're reaching their mid-30s, right? So they're kind of at that age where people start voting a lot. They elect President Reagan. Okay, so there's this beautiful moment where Carter's the president right before Reagan. Carter's who inherited the inevitable, remember how Spike has a downturn to it? Carter's who was there. He was president when things were coming back down to normal. When competitors like Honda were bringing more efficient, smaller cars onto the market. And American car companies who hadn't had any competitors for 20 years were suddenly caught off guard, being like, oh, shit, we just been building giant-ass cars that were kind of shitty for a while, and everybody was buying them. So things were taking that downward swing. Carter gave a famous speech called the Malaise speech. They called it the Malaise speech because it was filled with sort of this doom and gloom. But if you go back and you listen to it, everything he said came true. He was saying we can't continue on this me sort of path. We've got to pull together and make some sacrifices. You know, if we don't make sacrifices now, it's going to lead to problems further down the line. He worried about the polarization of the nation. He worried about the fact that it seemed that people were pulling into two different parties. I highly recommend it. I don't know how nerdy you are, but if you're any kind of political wonk or nerd, go look up Carter's malaise speech if you haven't already, because you're going to sit there and go, he's describing today, like the massive debt. He's describing that. The lack of direction, the lack of any production jobs, any kind of industry. So basically what happened was there was a president who was saying, look, here's how things are. It's not good. We're on a downward trajectory, but we can pull together. We will have to, raise taxes. Lately we've been lowering them, but we need to raise them back a little bit. We're going to have to pay off some debts, and we're going to have to take care of this stuff. And then along came Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan, the former actor. But don't forget, people call him an actor, but what he really was the GM salesman. He was the face of GM. Jake at State Farm, that guy? He was that. He was Jake at State Farm for like a decade. So everybody knew his face. He'd sort of cultivated this friendly, I say he, I'm sorry, I said GM, GE, General Electric. GE had cultivated him in all these commercials as being just sort of a fatherly, trustworthy guy. And so he was a shill. He was a salesman. And he came up and said, no, none of that's true. Like, we're going to be fine. And his slogan, you can get buttons to this day. His slogan was, "Make America Great Again." That was his slogan. And so what I want to leave you with the boomers is this. They're forever chasing an America that existed only as a glitch, just a temporary spike, an anomaly, right? I mean, I'm not saying America's not wonderful. It is. But they grew up in a period where it was just abnormally fucking fantastic, and it couldn't last. There's no way for it to last. And to me, it's like they're almost like junkies who are jonesing for a high that they'll never get again. And so when you hear this "Make America Great Again," and it's happening again under Trump, it's resurging under Trump, it's almost like the boomers' last hurrah is going on now, right? Like they're all dying off in the next 10, 12 years. They're all either going to die or go into nursing homes and no longer be viable to go out and about and vote. They're losing power is what I'm saying in the next 10 years or so. And so the "Make America Great Again," what that means is they're yearning for that childhood idea, that ideal that they lived for a while. Make America great again really just means they're yearning for that Camelot, for that city on the hill that the rest of us are like, what are you talking about? I remember saying that when my parents talked about that. Yeah, we had this city on the hill, blah, blah, blah. It's like, I was born in 1970. I grew up through the 70s and the 80s where, we had inflation, we had gas wars, we had a gas shortage where people were lining up, we had all kinds of chaos, because that's the way the world is. That's the way economies are, man. Like you don't get to just be badass and run everything for 20 years straight, unless you're in that glitchy anomaly zone there. So sorry, I rambled longer than I wanted to on this one, but I think it's worthwhile talking about the boomers and why they are a unique generation. It's not just that they all got iPods at the same time, right? It's not just that they all, they all love Freddie from Indirection or whatever. One Direction. I just conflated NSYNC and One Direction. That's how old I am. But it's, those touchstones are cool. And that's what keeps generations together, and kind of, probably why you should date within your own generation, to be honest. It's just because you get each other's jokes and references and stuff, and that's cool, you know. But it's not just that. The boomers, there's a special sort of thing that makes them. It's first of all, it's that spike of just amazing America that they grew up in, and so they're constantly going to be trying to make America into that again, and it's never going to be that again. It's just not. You know, I mean, really, unless the whole world goes to war again, and we stay on our island over here, our giant island over here, away from all the fighting, and you know, like it's never going to happen again. And then don't forget the other part of it is they're super narcissistic because at every stage of their lives, the entire, uh, you know, advertising industry directed all of their energy and focus on that really large, really rich generation. So, and then, you know, there's all kinds of other aspects too that we could get into. Tax law changed, like when they were of an age to inherit, the inheritance tax disappeared for about 5 to 7 years mysteriously. Once they had inherited all of their parents' money, it was reinstated. There's all kinds of stuff like that. The real estate law changed right around when they were about the right age to be buying homes. I mean, I'm not making this stuff up. I've done research and I've read a couple books about it, and it's thoroughly documented. Like, and that's why when you see a boomer screaming at a minimum wage worker about masks or whatever, it's because they've just never been they've never been made mockery of. They've never been their whole lives. They've been sort of taught that they're the center of everything. That you know that they're what matters. And it's funny because the Greatest Generation had a name for them. They were called the Me Generation. Like their parents and grandparents named them the Me Generation. This was back when they were, you know, in their teens and early tweens. Um, so anyway, talking about the boomers, I'm going to go ahead and get off cam. Looks like I have to buy some of this tritanium to finish up this order. But yeah, I mean, it's you know, it's not boomer hate. It's just understanding the boomers, and you know, why are we $27 trillion in debt? That's hard to even fathom that amount of money. That's so much money. We can't even conceive of that. But at the same time, why is our infrastructure crumbling? Why are people drinking lead water? Why are bridges falling down? Why? Here's a horrific thing. We have bacteria now that are resistant to antibiotics, and it's getting worse. And there's no antibiotics right now in production. And that's horrific because it takes about 10 years from beginning to production to get a new antibiotic online. They're not doing medical research either. Like we're in any region that you can conceive of, education, mental health, addiction care, infrastructure, any arena you choose, they have been slacking it off, just saying, fuck that. It's too expensive. They've been lowering their own taxes for generations. Dude, it's bad, you know, and I'm not saying hate the boomers, but I'm saying this is what's up. And I'll end with this. Have you seen that meme where it's like, tough people? No, tough times make for tough people. Tough people make for good times. Good times make for soft people. Soft people make for hard times, you know, and they always show like, you know, a graphic of an army man and then like, you know, a college guy smoking a pipe or some shit like that. And it's always a boomer sharing that. And what the boomers don't realize, that the irony is they are the soft people that were born of the soft times that their hard ass parents created. It's like, why would you share a meme about yourself, but position yourself like they think they're the hard ones? And okay, got to say this too. The whole participation trophy thing, that's a boomer thing, right? Oh, everybody gets a participation trophy these days. I'm like, boomer, your whole fucking life is a participation trophy. You just marched through life and everything was handed to you at every step of the way. You're about to inherit money. Oh, inheritance tax is gone. You're about to buy a house. Oh, interest rates go down. Federal loan programs are established, like at every step of the way. And yet they have the balls to talk about participation trophies. It's like, oh my God. Yeah. Okay. I guess I do hate boomers. All right. Enough of that. Thanks for tuning in. That's what this is going to be, I guess. This is going to be my rant/ramble. I'm not always going to rant. There are some scientific and cool things I do like to talk about. So I will say it's going to be just me talking about things that interest me. So hope you tune in. This is my random ass thoughts channel, and I'll catch you guys next time. Adios.